No financial worries at all. You can draw half of that on your official retirement date, which...
Why?
You got old, Michael.
Cindy, baby.
Hi.
What's the problem?
Do you live far from here?
Fuck!
Just before hitting the big 5-0, Duncan Visa heads to his doctor for a routine checkup. Despite being in top shape, his body carries the marks of his violent past. Old scars and bits of metal still lodged under his skin. The doctor gives him a clean bill of health, except for one issue, his smoking habit. Duncan, known in the underground as the legendary assassin Black Kaiser, works for a shadowy organization called Damocles. The company has a strict rule. When an assassin turns 50, they're forced into retirement with a hefty $8 million pension. Duncan's accountant reminds him that in just 2 weeks, on his birthday, the money will be his. Meanwhile, he makes a mysterious $200,000 donation, as he always does. Across the globe in Chile, another assassin, Michael Green, is also nearing retirement, but he's having a way better time than Duncan. He's partying hard, enjoying the company of a beautiful woman named Cindy, and indulging in enough substances to keep a chemist busy. Just when things are heating up, Michael is taken out by a sniper. A group of elite assassins, Fundo, Hilda, Carl, Alex, and even Cindy, were sent to eliminate him. Why? He asks. Because you got old, Michael. His retirement party turns into a bloodbath as the hit squad makes sure he won't be cashing in his pension. At Michael's funeral, Duncan crosses paths with Vivian, a former assassin turned operations manager at Damocles. She informs him that their boss has assigned him one last job before he retires, a revenge mission to take down the assassin who supposedly killed Michael. She claims the target is a Mexican hitman living in Belarus. To sweeten the deal, she offers Duncan a cool $1 million for the job. He doesn't say a word, just takes the documents and walks out. Back home in Triple Oak, Montana, Duncan starts getting bombarded with messages from Damocles' private network. Eventually, he calls Vivian, switching SIM cards constantly to stay off the grid. She ups the offer, $2 million, half up front. Still unsure if he wants the job, Duncan tells her to upload the intel to the Damocles server. Meanwhile, Vivian meets with her boss, Mr. Blood, who has a sinister plan. He's been secretly killing off retiring assassins to steal their pension funds through a loophole in their contracts. Duncan, with the biggest payout of all, is his next target. Blood deliberately gave him this final job just to set him up and eliminate him. Vivian warns him that going after the Black Kaiser is a terrible idea, but Blood isn't backing down. Duncan, unaware of the full extent of the setup, starts digging into his target's background. Once he gathers enough intel, he heads to Belarus without informing Vivian. Disguised as a maintenance worker, he sneaks into his target's hotel and starts making a ruckus, enough to piss off the Mexican assassin inside. When the man comes out to confront him, Duncan quickly pins him to the wall and neutralizes him. After taking down a few bodyguards, Duncan finds a file filled with information about himself. That's when it clicks, this mission was a trap. Determined to find out who's behind it, Duncan grabs a power drill and tries to get answers from the hitman. But the guy knows nothing. With no other choice, Duncan finishes the job, snaps a photo of the body, and sends it to Vivian. "Somebody set me up. You better hope you're not involved," he warns. Freaking out, Vivian rushes back to Blood. She tells him Duncan completed the mission and is now demanding the rest of his payment. She's furious, insisting that they should just pay him and let him walk away. But Blood refuses to hand over the pension. Instead, he orders the specialist assassins to take Duncan out for good. Back in Montana, Duncan tries to enjoy a quiet life, but his past won't let him go. Nightmares from old missions haunt him, and he keeps running into his new neighbor, Camille. She's young, quiet, and clearly dealing with her own struggles. Duncan sees her often at the local convenience store and restaurants, noticing how jumpy and sad she always looks. Over time, they start talking more, slowly forming a connection. "What did you do for work?" she asks him one day. "Funeral business," he replies. Duncan wants to help Camille in his own way, so he buys her a gun and tries to teach her how to shoot. But when she holds it, she freezes, unable to pull the trigger. Something in her past makes her terrified of weapons. "No worries," Duncan says. "We'll find another way to protect you." Meanwhile, the hit squad is closing in. They track down Duncan's accountant and demand his location. When the poor guy genuinely doesn't know, they kill him anyway, Going through his records, they find out Duncan owns 4 properties across different states. The team checks them one by one, but he's nowhere to be found. Their first stop is in Florida. Cindy, as flashy as ever, arrives at one of the apartments, expecting action. But the place is rented out, and the clueless tenant mistakes her for an escort service. He doesn't live long enough to realize his mistake. Frustrated, the team methodically eliminates anyone they find at Duncan's other properties, but they're still empty-handed. Then, after digging deeper, they stumble upon a pattern. Duncan has been making regular $200,000 transfers to an unidentified person. The money is always wired through a bank in Triple Oak, Montana. Imagine how much dope you could buy with that. One of them jokes. Now they know exactly where to look. Hilda makes a call to Blood, confidently assuring him that Duncan Visa, the Black Kaiser, is as good as dead. The hit squad finally tracks Duncan down in Montana while he's out buying another gift for Camille. On his way home, he crosses paths with Cindy, who plays the damsel in distress, pretending her car has broken down. With her phone conveniently dead, she asks Duncan for help. Sticking to the script, she ends up at Duncan's house for the night, casually mentioning that assistance will arrive at 10 a.m. the next morning. Trying to play her charm card, she flirts with him, teasing, "You're kinda cute for an older guy. I swore I'd never go for someone older than my dad." Things heat up, but just as Cindy positions herself to help Fundo take a clean shot, Duncan senses the setup and moves just in time. The sniper's bullet ends up hitting Cindy in the shoulder instead. Duncan wastes no time. He dives off the bed to take cover while bullets rain down on his house. He retaliates quickly, launching an axe straight into Cindy, finishing her off. Moments later, Hilda and Carl storm into his home, but Duncan has already slipped away, tracking down the sniper's location. He takes out Fundo and grabs his rifle. Using the thermal scope, he spots Hilda by the faint heat of her breath and takes her out in one precise shot. Carl tries a surprise attack from behind, but Duncan is quicker. He eliminates him on the spot. Searching for clues, Duncan finds a key to a local inn. When he gets there, he discovers Junkie Jane in a drugged-out daze. Through her incoherent ramblings, he learns that Camille has been kidnapped by Alexei. The assassins figured out the bond between Duncan and Camille and decided to use her as bait. Duncan rushes to Camille's house, but she's long gone. Meanwhile, in Mr. Blute's lavish mansion, he's seething with rage. Learning that Duncan wiped out his assassin team, including his girlfriend, only fuels his anger. Vivian, unfazed, sarcastically reminds him that she had warned him about messing with the Black Kaiser. "Come on, don't pout. With your looks, you'll find another girlfriend in no time." But Blute isn't letting this go. This is personal. Knowing he needs backup, Duncan turns to an old friend, Porter, a retired assassin. Porter knows how Blute operates and confirms Duncan's suspicion. Blute was never going to let him retire peacefully. Camille, he says, is likely being held at Blute's estate. But just as Duncan is about to leave, Porter betrays him. He drugs Duncan and hands him over to Blute in exchange for a hefty reward. Duncan wakes up chained in Blute's underground dungeon. With 4 days left until his 50th birthday, Blute wants to break him first, then kill him on that very day. While torturing him, Blute cruelly taunts Duncan by showing him pictures of Camille, trying to break his spirit. Camille, kept in a drug state by Jane, has no clue what's going on. On the 3rd day, while Blute is stabbing Duncan with his signature thin-bladed knife, the blade suddenly snaps on a piece of metal embedded in Duncan's body. Enraged, Blute slashes Duncan's face and gouges out his left eye. Soaked in his own blood, Duncan bides his time. That night, he manages to free himself using the broken knife piece. By morning, when the guards come in, he ambushes them, taking them all out. When Blute arrives to oversee the torture session, Duncan cuts the power, plunging the dungeon into darkness. One by one, he picks off Blute's men, using the shadows to his advantage. As Blute flees, Duncan fights his way out, eliminating every last guard who stands in his way. Wounded but determined, Duncan seeks out Jasmine, a trusted gun dealer. She patches him up and arms him with advanced weaponry. Once he's ready, he makes a call to Vivian, offering himself in exchange for Camille. She agrees, but of course, she and Blute plan to double-cross him. Knowing this, Duncan sets up an ambush at an abandoned warehouse. He calls Vivian again, but this time, he purposely doesn't hang up right away or destroy his SIM card. Predictably, Vivian traces his location and arrives with Blute's men, including Alexei. When they confront him, Duncan offers Vivian a chance to walk away, but she refuses, believing she has him cornered. As they prepare to open fire, Duncan triggers his laser-guided heavy machine gun, mowing down Blute's entire crew in seconds. He spares the wounded Vivian, knowing she isn't the real enemy. His main target is still alive, Mr. Blute. Watching the slaughter unfold on his security cameras, Blute panics. He orders his remaining guards to secure the mansion, but when Duncan finally arrives, fear overtakes them. Instead of fighting, they flee. Desperate, Blute tries to have Camille brought to him, but it's too late. The Black Kaiser has reached his door. With a swift swing of his axe, Duncan ends Blute's reign for good, beheading him in one clean motion. Rescuing Camille, Duncan takes her back to Montana to help her recover. While looking around her room, he stumbles upon old newspaper clippings about a family that was murdered years ago. His heart drops. It was a hit he himself had carried out, based on false information. The only survivor of that massacre was a little girl, who he now realizes is Camille. Overwhelmed by the truth, Duncan suddenly senses Camille behind him. She's holding a gun, her hands trembling. "The only thing I remember is your face," she says, her voice heavy with emotion. "The man who killed my family. The man who ruined my life. I prayed I would die that night. Why didn't you just shoot me?" Tears welling in his eyes, Duncan apologizes, explaining how everything had gone horribly wrong. He tells her that if taking his life will bring her peace, she should do it. Camille hesitates, shaking with anger and sorrow. She pulls the trigger, but the bullet misses. As the tension settles, Camille turns to Duncan, her voice steadier this time. "Help me find out who gave the order." Duncan nods, knowing he owes her that much. Their journey isn't over yet.